Hey Aquarius, how you doing? So this is the start of your 2-week forecast, taking you from the 27th of April, the new moon in Taurus, the day also when we've got the very last opposition between Pluto and Mars. So this is a bit of a watershed moment, I have to say. It's taking you from the new moon right the way through to the full moon in Scorpio on the 12th of May. And that's a pretty big day because on that day, the full moon's in opposition to Uranus. This is Uranus is one of your ruling planets. So this is a pretty big full moon that's coming up. So really what I want to do in this short-ish video is to give you a sense of how to prepare for this very sort of Uranian full moon energy. We've got 2 weeks. They're not as difficult as they've been in recent months. We've had a lot of change stuff going on. And I think, I think it's completely justified if you felt like you've gone through some really big personal shifts in this spring, with the eclipse season and the very sort of what seems like relentless retrogrades, with Mars retrograde, Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde. It has all felt really intense. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this. I hope it's going to help you in preparing for this time. If you're new to this channel, hi, my name's Louise Satana Munson, and I use astrology in such a way to hopefully give you a sense of optimism, that you're not doomed by astrology, but in fact, you can use it. You can use it as a tool to help you plan a better life. If you've come back here and you've been here before, then welcome back. I really appreciate your trust in my navigation skills. So anyway, let's bring up the charts. And the first thing that occurs to me, this is a waxing moon forecast. So the waxing moon forecast is all about the moon growing. I mean, obviously the moon's not growing. The moon is the same size throughout, but with this, as we start this forecast, the new moon is a dark moon. It is completely unilluminated. What this means to me is we are blind. We are in a deeply intuitive phase. It's a very internalized process. It's a time when we don't have all the answers readily available and we have to tune right into ourselves. So you'll see by the end of this process, we're at the full moon stage and it's fully illuminated. What this means to me is this is a very externalized thing where we can absolutely see what's around us, see all the opportunities. In fact, this is kind of like a clean slate. The new moon really shows us where we've got like a blank canvas. We've let go of a lot of things and we're free to sow some new seeds and plant seeds of desire, plant things in the place into our life that we would like to bring forwards into our world and into our existence. And the full moon really shows where things have manifested. Now, I'm not saying if you sow a seed at the time of the new moon that 2 weeks later it will be fully manifested. I don't think it works like that. But around the time of the full moon, I really think that we get the true cost of where our thoughts and energies have taken us. So this is, the waxing moon phase, which is a growth period. We can be sowing things that could be manifesting and feeling great around the time of the full moon. Or if we're kind of swimming in negative thoughts and we're not really being mindful of how we're using our energy, we could have some quite chaotic things. And I think around the time of the full moon, it really gives you a clue as to how you're doing. Are you really creating the life the way you want it to be? I.e., it feels exciting around the time of the full moon. Yes, there's lots coming in. Might be a bit overwhelming, but you're buzzing. Or does it feel terrible? Does it feel like, really overwhelming, emotionally overwhelming? I think at those times it shows that at some point in this journey, you've made some decisions that aren't in alignment with who you are. So I really see that this 2-week period is about you getting back into alignment and to growing the energies that you really want to see come up into your world. And the first part of this, coming up to the first quarter, it's mainly in the dark, which means we are absolutely tuning in. We are needing to use our full intuition, a process of self-inquiry, journaling, meditation. We are not so outward. We are a lot more internalized. We're a lot more at home. And as such, I think we need to take it easy. We need to be really gentle with ourselves because we are our own tool. We are the person that we need to be listening to. So we need to really make sure we are kept in top condition. As we come into this second part of the forecast period, from the 4th of May, we're a lot more externalized. Clues and information are coming at us or towards us. And so we need to be able to receive information and be open to it, and then to be able to process it. So this is much easier, I think, and it's a lot faster. Things start to speed up as we go through this 2-week process. And as such, I think it's also important just to quickly see how this feeds into an actual diary. I find it quite helpful to see how it can be laid out. It looks, I'm able to sort of visualize it in my mind's eye. So, the new moon in Taurus starts on the 27th of April on a Sunday. The midpoint, halfway through from dark to light, that is on the 4th of May. And that really represents a choice point where we're needing to step it up a bit. And then the full moon in Scorpio, again, this is based on British times. I'm in the UK time zone. It appears to be happening on in the early hours of Monday, but you might find if you're in North America or Hawaii, for instance, that this is actually happening on the 11th. So just, you might need to check your own times. And I recommend timeanddate.com is a great place. If you go to the sun and moon tab, I think it's called, and then go to the moon cycles or moon phases, you'll see the actual time of the new moon and the full moon in your own unique time zone. So please feel free to use that. In between these two moons, and I think these are like emotional bookends at, at the ends of each of these this period of time. The new moon is pretty involved. You've got all the energy of new potential and this blank slate and this feeling of, right, I'm ready to start again. And at the same time, there is an ongoing opposition between Pluto and Mars. It's been going on. It's been coming in since the end of October. We had an exact opposition between the Pluto and Mars on the 3rd of November, then another exact one on the 3rd of January. And then we've got the last one going exact on the 27th of April. So this is the last one. After this point, thank goodness, Pluto and Mars are coming out of their opposition. However, even by the time of the full moon in Scorpio, they are still technically in opposition, but it's getting easier and easier and easier. So it's all starting to release and unravel, I think, from the new moon in Taurus. However, right at the end of this forecast period, the full moon itself is really quite spicy. The full moon is in opposition to the sun, which it always is, but it's in opposition to the sun in a conjunction with Uranus. Now, Uranus really makes things unpredictable. And the full moon, at the best of times, is a time of emotional, like when we're highly emotional, highly charged, highly triggerable. And so I think this particular full moon is going to be quite interesting. It has the possibility of it going completely out of control. And it just so happens that, we've got the full moon in Scorpio, the moon and the sun in fixed signs, and also Pluto and Mars are also in fixed signs still. So it's like we have these two oppositions in what looks like a grand cross. It's actually not in a cross, but it is still very, very fixed, and it's creating a really strong energy. And so what I'm going to do over the next short while is go through three different charts. Three different charts for the new moon in Taurus, the switch point midway through, and then the full moon in Scorpio. But like I said, these two big moons are like bookends, and in between, I think this is a time when we need to be quite soft with ourselves. I don't think we need to quest. I think we need to observe what's going on. I've looked at each of the signs from different perspectives. For instance, I record a relationship and connection forecast for each sign of the zodiac, and also a career and ambition forecast for each sign of the zodiac. And I've already recorded these. And, I can tell you, when I've deep dived into each of these, I really see that, in between these two moons, it feels like we're in this moment of deep change. It feels like we're formulating a new plan, but we're still internalizing things. So it's with that energy that I share this information with you. So in this 2-week period, the first one is really quite, I've only included the most important aspects as I see them. So the first thing is Venus is going into Aries, having been in Pisces for quite a while. And Venus is going into Aries on Wednesday, the 30th of April. Now, Venus isn't very strong in the sign of Aries. However, she's been in Pisces, where she's exalted, but she's a little bit of a people pleaser. a little bit magical, and also not necessarily very clear. And so Venus coming into Aries, I think, is marking a time when we're coming back into emotional clarity and clarity in terms of our relationships. We're ready to take action a little bit more with the people we're relating to. And I think this is a good thing. I think the spring in particular with Venus and Mercury retrograde has marked a time when a lot of us have been in a state of confusion. It's given us a lot of time to really review how we feel in life, and what's working, what's not working. However, I really see that Venus moving into Aries on the 30th of April as being a time when we're ready to move forwards a little bit. And, Venus is also coming into a conjunction with Neptune on Friday, the 2nd of May. Now, this is also really interesting to me because Venus has already made 2 conjunctions with Neptune this year. That's not normal. We normally have 1 conjunction each year. And for the last 13 years or so, Venus has made her conjunctions with Neptune in the sign of Pisces, which is very much like a fairy godmother kiss, or, someone waving a magic wand. It's very magical. It's full of promise. It's full of imagination, and like really sort of like pulling your highest dreams together and believing in rainbow colored unicorns. It's all sort of like magical and very much like a little 5-year-old girl's birthday party, but not necessarily about to take action. Now, Venus coming into a conjunction with Neptune on Friday the 2nd is going to be the first one that's occurring in the sign of Aries. So what I really think that this is a moment for us to wish big, but start to form a plan to make our wishes come true. Venus and Neptune is really about feeling the flow and creativity at a much higher level and being able to integrate it into our bodies. So I really think we can, anything we want to bring into a clear manifestation, anywhere we want to feel elevated and ethereal and celestial and feel really, really great that our life is really turning out in the way we want it to. Now we can start to build it as part of a plan. This Venus conjunct Neptune in Aries is asking us to take action. And if you're ready to take action, I think the necessary steps will all start to fall into place, in particular after the 4th of May. So I really think the 2nd of May is a time to hold the potential energy of this particular conjunction. I think it's exciting. Now, in week 2, there's some real building block energies. In particular, on the 5th of May, Mercury in an exact sextile with Jupiter is really showing that we can be a lot more friendly, a lot more collaborative. We can talk plainly and a lot. We can share a lot together. And so I think this is a really helpful energy, especially as we're coming into the more lightened times of the moon. The moon appears to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger in the night sky. We are more consciously aware of great things, great helpful collaborative things in our life. So friendships are really, really important. And then on the 6th of May, Venus is in a sextile to Pluto. Now, this could be great if you're in a sexual relationship, a loving relationship as well. Things could get really deep and your trust in each other can really deepen. But, however you choose to use this energy, I think the ability to trust in the process and trust each other and go deeper into our collaborative lives, I think this is working beautifully. Now, on the next day, Mercury makes an exact conjunction with Chiron, and this could be quite ouchy if you're triggered and if you don't have great relationships with people, for sure. If there's no outlet for this could be quite difficult. But Mercury in a conjunction with Chiron in the sign of Aries is really showing this moment where we can be transparent, we can articulate what we've been feeling, and I think where our feelings really come up in such a way that we know what's going on. Like often, I think our hurts, particularly psychological wounding, I think it can be, we can separate it from ourselves. We talk about, when this happened to me, and it's almost like a badge of honor. And the moment we label it, we see it slightly outside of ourselves, like it's a thing. And when it's slightly outside of ourselves, it's really difficult to process things, So I really think with this Mercury conjunct Chiron energy, we are able to feel what's going on, to be able to talk about it, and for the potential of it to be processed. So if you add these 3 together, and remember, these are the days when these energies are exact. That's not to say they're I mean, to be fair, they're already in place pretty much throughout this whole 2-week period. But this is the fulcrum point of this. This is when they're really, really coming into play. So I think the 5th to the 7th of May in particular, it marks a time when we can come together as friends. We can feel things much more passionately and come into a deeper level of trust and truth, and also open up to the things we're vulnerable about. So this could represent a time of great change within relationships. Now, coming up to the 10th of May, Mercury moves into Taurus. And then I think the way we communicate is starting to get a lot more practical. And I think that's helpful, so we take some of the fire out of some of the communications that are going on. And maybe in the news, things won't be so inflammatory. Although who knows, I suspect they will. But Mercury into Taurus is really, I think we will be communicating from a place of practicality, with provable evidence, and in such a way where we're trying to work together rather than trying to piss each other off, which I think is a good thing. So that's how I think these 2 weeks, these are the things that really stand out. But before I go any further, and I will bring up the 3 charts I've selected in just a moment. But before I do that, I want to just say a big thank you to everybody that supports this channel. I really, really admire you, and I'm really glad that you're in my life. Thank you so much for this. People support the channel through buying me a coffee, or also, I've got a membership, Feel Good Astrology Community, where there are extra readings. I'll tell you about it a little bit at the end, but all the details are below in the description field. So if that sounds like something that might be interesting to you, to support the channel, to get extra readings, to get discounts and things like that, and also the chance to join us, there's a growing, lovely sort of like team feeling there, then please do consider that. But anyway, let's have a look at these charts now. So let's have a look at this a little bit deeper then. From your perspective, obviously, it's really hard to ignore this really big opposition between Pluto and Mars. Pluto's in your sign. It's been there since November fully. It obviously had a couple of deep dives, from 2023 and 2024. But this new moon is right in the middle. It's in this T square with Pluto and Mars. So to me, it feels like to really understand what's being created here with this new moon in Taurus in your 4th house, really like giving you a sense of stability at home, or a chance to find deeper stability at home. We also have to understand the pressures that you've been under in recent times. Since this Pluto and Mars opposition started at the end of October last year, Pluto, actually, it started when Pluto was just in the sign of Capricorn, and Mars was in Cancer. But since then, this like Pluto-Mars opposition has been kind of coming out of the 6th and 12th and going into the 1st and 7th. To me, this has been a time where what's been brewing in the unconscious mind is now coming into your conscious mind. So, anywhere where you feel stuck spiritually and emotionally, and in particular with depression, your like mental health and your physical health, it's now come into I don't want to say a bigger problem, but it's come into a much more conscious way of thinking. So like Pluto in the 1st, in the sign of Aquarius, is really asking you to be a lot more in control of things. So anywhere where you felt out of control, where maybe you couldn't get through depression, or as Pluto was like coming around in between these two, most likely there was a feeling of like losing it a little bit internally with the mind. Pluto brings up our fears, and our fear of losing our mind, our fear of not ever feeling like fully happy. Like Pluto going through the 12th can really like show a time when we suffer from a lot of pessimism and feel quite depressed. So Pluto coming into the 1st was, I think, your start to try to control how you're feeling, and to take bold action, to feel a lot clearer about yourself, to have a feeling of more power in your life, and to feel like nothing else can phase you, like that you can't be pushed around, that like an outside influence can't come in and kind of push you off your course. And here's the thing, Mars in your seventh house is really showing a lot of pushback from the people in your life, and that the people in your life right now are a lot more dominant, a lot more assertive. They definitely have their own ways of seeing things, which may well conflict with yours. And so it's an interesting situation to find yourself in, but not completely by surprise, really. I mean, any time we change, the people that are around us change to reflect the changes we're going through, because I always think the first and the seventh, this is about your identity, and this is the identity of yourself in the mirror. Like, people show you who you are by being who they are. They are reflecting back to you the kind of person you are. So as you're getting stronger in yourself, and more clear about where your boundaries are, you're finding a similar thing is going on with the people in your life, that they're showing you their boundaries and they're showing you how strong they are. And so it's difficult as it starts to come in. After a while, you'll both get used to both of you being in power, having your own power, and allowing each other to be the powerful creator that they are. But often, like when we grow up and we have this idea of relationships, we've been sold these ideas that, the two people in a relationship are somehow controlling each other. There's this idea that in a relationship, you make all of your decisions together. And believe me, I mean, I have fully bought that. I was raised in that, by people that believe that, by, quite a few generations that believe that when you come together, you make your decisions together. And maybe one person is slightly stronger than the other, and the other is slightly more appeasing and people pleasing than the other. And that's the model that we've had. But one model that we haven't really seen is that we are both creators in our own right. And by being ourselves and following our own paths, we can come together and respect each other and find a way together. Now, it's a hard balance to get, because often, when you're following your own path and they're following their own path, you may well go off in different directions. And that is kind of inevitable. And that is what happens in relationships. We often stay together until our paths start to separate. But should that be a reason why we stay together? Like, should that be a reason why we don't evolve, just so that we can stay in our partnership? And I think this is the main sort of crux of a lot of relationship issues, is we do all want to evolve, or most of us want to evolve. And we know that when we evolve, we may risk losing that person that's closest to us. Well, I do think there are other options. And I think, as we evolve, we can evolve together in our own unique ways. But you have to, if you want to feel free to evolve yourself, you need to also be open to your partner going their own way. And, if I guess there is this saying that if you let something go, if it's for you, it'll come back to you. And so, you are exploring independence, which is, your birthright. You're an Aquarian, but you're exploring independence and you being unique in a whole new way, with a whole new set of ideas about power. And so Pluto coming through here can wreak havoc in your relationships at first, because you can't fail but to be yourself. And of course, in reflection, they can't fail to not be themselves either. So this may well have come up as a stalemate. And of course, here, sorry, I'm sniffy a bit, but the new moon here in Taurus is reflecting what happens at home. And so this is, I think, a new start at home. This is a new possibility to reset yourself at home, to reset each of you, to give each of you your chance to be yourselves, but to find a way to still relate to each other. So I guess you're sort of creating for yourself a new set of infrastructures that can work. Maybe there's a new way that you can check in with each other, and I don't know. I mean, this is new territory. If you think about it, the people who sold us the idea that we all grow together and, we're tightly entwined and, neither of us can evolve, or there's one person that leads and everyone else follows. That really came from the generation that I grew up under. The Pluto in Leo people, the boomer generation. The boomers were the ones that really perpetuated this idea. Bless them. That is what they knew. Now we are really in the opposite generation. And so this is really playing out at the moment. But this new moon in Taurus, suffice to say, it is creating a new paradigm, and you are leading with it. Like it or lump it or loathe it. You are leading with it. You can't really not do it. It is kind of, this Pluto energy coming in is firing you up to be yourself. And so this new moon in Taurus, I think, is about you feeling a little bit of stability after a good 6 months or so of feeling a little bit unstable. As these two were coming into their opposition, they were first impacting you at the feeling of health and mental health. So maybe the struggle to be yourself, was making you feel depressed because you couldn't see how you could be yourself without maybe without ruffling the feathers of your relationship. So this is big. And of course, even if you're not in a relationship, just the feeling that you have of wanting to be powerful in yourself will create a response in everybody else in your life. So it doesn't have to be your partner. It could be your family, your friends. People are sensing the deep transformation in you. And of course, the ones that are really up to the job of being your friend and being in your life, they will grow with you and change with you. But the ones who aren't, sadly, they are marking themselves out of your life journey. There is a quite palpable shift. Now, talking of shifts, this is the first and the seventh house and the fourth. There are four houses that are really important, the four angular houses. So the first, the fourth, the seventh, and the 10th. And this is where the full moon comes in. So the full moon, so you still got the first, the fourth, the seventh still highlighted, but then at the time of the full moon, the 10th house has the moon in it. And, when the moon goes into the 10th house, we tend to feel really exposed. Our emotions are on display. So it's a good time not to go out and get pissed. Go somewhere that's real high stakes. Go somewhere where your life could be ruined, if you say the wrong thing. So it's high stakes. And given that the full moon is in opposition to Uranus, we are a little bit jumpy, a little bit jittery. We may well feel unstable at home. And, like if you go out and have a drink when you're feeling emotional, how it seems to affect you more. My big advice here is whatever you're doing around the 12th, don't do it with a loaded gun. Obviously, I'm not talking about guns, but don't do it with a loaded emotional gun. Really work on your emotions and feel as stable as you can before you're going anywhere where there's a high level of pressure. So, for instance, if you are going through things with your relationships and with that feeling of home and your stability at home, this full moon in Scorpio is likely to show you just how unstable you're feeling. It will give you all the evidence you need to see as to what you need to correct or what you feel like correcting or what you feel like working on. But that's not to say you need to react to that. See the full moon in Scorpio as being a moment of observation. It's going to give you everything that you need to see to know what action to take in the future. And that's the thing. It's showing you for the future, not for right now. So my big advice as you go through this 2 weeks is you are going through this really big change. And this new moon is really showing, okay, I haven't felt stable in a long time. Now is my time to build stability. And at the end of this 2-week period, as you've been considering your stability, most likely it has brought up some destabilizing thoughts. It probably has brought up some things that have triggered you. And just as you come into the full awareness of it at the time of the full moon, of course, it's a time when we can get really overwhelmed and things seem to be coming at us from all sides. But it's time to hold your ground, hold your peace, know that once the moon has come out of the full moon, just a few days in, maybe the 14th, 15th, that will be your time to start to process the information. So I really do see that this 2-week period is about you writing a new story for yourself. And this is a real foundational story change for you. So I absolutely wish you well in finding your own new stabilizing story. Now, obviously, with the 1st, the 7th, the 4th, and the 10th, we are touching on relationships. We're touching on our home relationships. We're also talking about your career. Now, I deep dive every time I do one of these forecasts. I also deep dive and give a relationship and connection forecast for relationships and love. And I also do a career and ambition forecast. So I'm just going to take a moment to show you how you can access those if you would like that extra information. So for instance, like I said, every new moon, every full moon, so twice a month, you will get 2 readings if you're part of my membership. And if you are considering it, you just go to www.school.com/feelgoodastrology. You get your first week free. So you can check it out and see if it feels like something that's going to benefit you. If you are somebody who has considered getting a consultation with me in the past, then as a member, once you're a confirmed member, a paying member, you'll also be able to get a discount. And also get a discount if I do a webinar or when I do a course. So like if you are sort of feeling, hey, I quite like Feel Good Astrology, then it could be worthwhile investing in membership. One thing I also do, some people do just like pop over just to get the readings. That's all they're interested in. They don't need anything else. They just pop in, get the readings and pop out. But for instance, if you are wanting to interact with people who are also learning and sharing and on a growth journey themselves, and most of the members are, then you might also like the community hangout. So each month I will hang out with you over a Zoom call for an hour or two, and we'll set an agenda. So I'll put a little questionnaire out and see what everyone's interested in. And obviously people email me and so on and so forth. And then, we recorded our community hangout about 3 or 4 days ago. It was on Zoom, really great conversation. We were looking at the patterns in our lives and how, funnily enough, when important people are born in our lives, or when important events happen in our lives, just how kind of amazing it is how all of these events fit into our birth charts. So that's what we've been doing. We've been really sort of like chatting around that and seeing what conversations come up around. So it's a bit like therapy. We've all been doing it to each other. This is a really therapeutic place. And if that sounds like something that would suit you, then just check out the links below in the description fields. So you'll be able to see how you can join. You just go to www.school.com/feelgoodastrology. But anyway, look, wishing you a really great 2 weeks ahead. This is an amazingly busy time and one of big stories to be written. So have a good one and catch you in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now.